Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. And thanks for being patient with us. We are live streaming. That was the delay. So if you want to text friends, you can go to our individual YouTube page. Facebook, right, Ronnie? Also our Facebook page, the live stream. Or you can go to our live stream. You can also send friends there. Coming out this morning, I'm the treasurer. And we might get canceled tonight because of the weather, but thank goodness we did not. As Nick told me yesterday, we want to be open during the blizzard. So we are really not blizzard because I wouldn't want y'all coming out in blizzard. Please silence your cell phone. Don't have you looking at your cell phone because I'm gonna look at you cross-eyed. Silence your cell phones. The restaurants are. So first of all, let me thank BU. Nick Bates. Nick, can you raise your hand, please? Nick is the interim director here at the Howard Thurman Center. Here to our board members, raise your hand. We worked very hard to put this together for you. To be on the intersection of sports and religion, and it's a very important topic, especially after the Kyrie Irving tweet last year. So we are looking forward to our wonderful panelists and our moderator. I just don't want to forget anything here. All right, well, I'm not going to delay anymore. Our moderator today is Mukala Kambungo. He's a teacher in high school, television, former high school and college sports reporter. He received his communication degree from Salem State and a master's degree from Emerson. With no further ado, let's give our panelists and moderator a round of applause.
Down the line, panelists introduce themselves. Give us a short fact about yourself.
Peace and blessings. My name is Charles, and I was born here in Boston, Massachusetts, and Boston police officer. I started a radio station called Touch 106.1 FM, the fabric of the Black community. I'm the producer of Touch TV. I'm a member of the Nation of Islam. My mother fell in love with Islam in 1969. I started a limousine company called First Choice Limousine Service. I've been in the entertainment business and media since 1979. I love myself, I love my people, and I'd like to thank this organization for putting this together because knowledge is power.
Hi, my name is Reverend Bob Gray. Yeah, my name is Reverend Bob Gray. And I'm a pastor at Bethel AME Church in the chapel for the Celtics. This is my 23rd season, and from Boston, and I was the assistant chaplain for the Patriots for 10 years and the Sox for 11. And one of the things that I try to do, I I ran the juvenile probation department in Dorchester. I was in Brooklyn. Kids were wearing. And one of the things that I really try to do with not only in the ministry, but in general, help people to really develop some life strategies for dealing with life that goes sideways. And you know, sooner or later, life's gonna go sideways for all of us. And so, so that's one of the things that I try to do when I work in ministry, at the church and the community, and the athletes, because they're just people like you and me.
Hi, I'm Nina McCoy. I'm the CEO of Dimensions Educational Consulting. It's an organization that provides BABJ resources nationally and internationally to folks like us, Foundation, to Black Futures Project, to many different movement and social justice-based organizations, so that we can do our highest quality, which is to recover the sense of our humanity and relationships. That is what we do, and we help people to do that through looking at options and strategies for being in an adaptive relationship with our behavior. Our work is a self-determined Black women majority led organization, and our organization helps us to create development projects with Black and brown women for their relationship and agency in being able to move through the world with power. So that's what I do in the world. Something interesting about me is that I happen to actually like repelling. For Black women, do. You think my life is dangerous enough, right? But no, I do like repelling. That's something that I enjoy, and something that I grew up with the generation of Black Orthodox
Testimony. I'm Captain Tazariak of the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge under Commander. Myself and from Jersey drove up here to be a part of this event. I appreciate the National Organization of Journalists for having us, especially on the topic like this with religion and sports and how that we can be perceived. Our background is to rehabilitate Blacks, Hispanics, and Indians from whether it be crime, broken families, homes, lack of information, knowledge, lack of spirituality. Without spirituality, you can't actually affect change in your community. So we do into the communities and affect change that way. Right?
Thank you. I'd like to preface this with responding to questions we have. All right, when responding, just, be cognizant of time and, make sure you don't keep logging. Try to make just put, because we don't have no time. All right, so our first topic of this session, we're going to talk about Kyrie Irving was in the news earlier in the season, a tweet, and that tweet had many reactions from many different people. So let's start down here. How could Kyrie Irving have better handled the situation? It seemed like when he was asked questions about it, he was more on the defensive and not trying to give any answers. But how could he just have a better handle the situation?
I think the danger when it comes to Black athletes specifically expressing that's contrary to what America feels we should have, there probably was not a better way or a bad way for him to express it. If it's opposite of what is the norm, then it's going to be controversial. So in hindsight, he shouldn't have done it at all because he wilted, meaning at the end of it, he ends up apologizing. If we go back into the 70s, Muhammad Ali never refused to fight war, and then he ends up lighting the fire for the Olympics.
Come on now.
That lets you know there's some people that are, Kyrie, even the tweet itself was just a tweet, anything. All he did was just put it out there, driving you wild. And so now you got this young man who probably didn't have the fortitude to fight with it, and so eventually just crumbled. So it's necessarily wrong. The only wrong thing I think he did was apologizing. He should have never apologized because he did nothing wrong. He should have been able to express his spirituality.
Anybody?
I would agree with my brother, and I would say that here the current report wrote in 1968 that there are two Americas. One, two Americas, one is separate and unequal. One is unequal. When you have a brother or sister who wants to express themselves and try to find out their root, find out who they are, and receive knowledge, there shouldn't be anything wrong with that. However, but when you live in a society that stripped us of who we are, stripped us of our culture, stripped us to nothing and wants us to think like them and be like them, then you come to this point where you have our brother who expressed he expressed the love for himself. He was earning, he was trying to find a root of himself. But then you have this government that wants to say, you still a nigga. And you need to be quiet and you need to stay in your place. And unfortunately, our brother didn't have the support of us. We should have been supporting him so he could have felt the energy coming from us where he would have.
You know, one of the issues in this society nowadays is the fact that because of social media, right, everybody is looking forward, looking at everything that everyone says. And if I don't like you, I'm going to pull it apart. If I like you, I'm going to support you. One of the things that I realized after being around Apple, everybody is waiting for them to say something about all the issues in society. And some people have to make a good point, and some people feel like they have to make a point because that's what everybody expects. And so you have to be ready, no matter what you say, you have to be ready for the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's what you're going to get, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's the society that we live in now. That's how people judge. Everyone is sitting there, everybody picks up their phone and they're waiting to see what someone's going to say. There are haters everywhere. And so even if you say it's a nice sunny day, someone's going to find some fault with that. If they didn't like the way you said it, they didn't like how many words you used to say it. So I think that some of that kickback, and in so many things that I see, we have to expect that when we kick. That doesn't mean that what you say isn't true. It just means that not everybody is going to accept it. And people that make out okay are the ones that understand the fact that I'm going to say this, and I'm going to have people that support me, and I'm going to have people that don't support me. And I think the people that make out the best are the people that realize that and they maintain their mental health.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna plus one on that, but also take us to the reality that the sports industry is a system. And in this country, we are living with systems that were not built for our survival. That just is the basic truth. The systems were not built for us. They were not constructed for us to have agency and voice, and to be able to say what we want, when we want. They have rules, and those rules often support white supremacy and racism. And if you know that you are in a system where those rules were created to keep you in a particular position, then the smart person who has signed a contract and an agreement to be paid and to be commoditized and to use time to be able to put forward the benefit of not always you, but you plus, will even make $1 over your success. When you sign agreements to be able to do that, then you have to know, how do I navigate within the system and not lose my soul? So when Kyrie was navigating, he did the very first thing that would make sense for a Black man who wants to use his agency and platform toward the success and proliferation of other Black men coming through the system, right? The struggle, but also with the joy and the celebration of knowing who you are and where you come from. That's where he started. But the place in which you asked, did he make a mistake, was, did he recognize the contract that you are in when you, the contract that you are in when you actually decide to say, pay me for my body, pay me for my talent, pay me for my wits. And I don't care whether it's in sports, whether it's in arts, or whatever celebrity that you are in, you're in a relationship with the system. So the first thing he had to think about was, what are the times that we are in and what are the rules? And I'm just going to say that right now, there have been too many people of color who have been brought onto the mat, shamed, and had their history and work and reputation rotted in the public eye over anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism has become not an opportunity for folks to learn more about our history and our peoples and our alignment across Black and Jewish communities. It has become a bully pulpit in many cases. And why is it a bully pulpit? Because rather than talk about what has to change in our behavior and in our assumptions and the way we deal with each other, we would rather do something called virtue signaling. We would rather have people apologize for a tweet. We would rather people say something in an article in the news rather than be accountable for their actual lived behavior. I think it's super important for us as purveyors and consumers of news to be more accountable to how we allow that to happen. If there's an issue with something that Kyrie did, Kyrie should be accountable in his behavior. So should Nike. Because for Nike, who in 2020 had the Black Nike protest go through and around their organization with close to 6,500 people complaining about racism, but now their first corporation of equity is to stand up against the Black man's anti-Semitism, we have a problem. This is not the way we hold equity for all. If we really want to stand up for equity, it has to be about the way we live, our principles, our values, our commitments to each other. There is no way to be able to testify to your integrity doing that. Through a tweet, through an article, or through a statement made in the news. It has to go how you live every day. And that's the best of what religion is. So we're here to talk about tonight the relationship between religion and sports. And the very first thing we have to do is change our relationship to accountability. We are accountable to each other in our behavior. And so my question is, how did Kyrie behave? Was that behavior upholding what he needed to do at that point? Stand up for his agency and voice of the Black man. And then also stand up for his people. And then also say, as he said in the comments, I love all religions. But maybe he had to learn a little bit more about this climate we're in right now. But we're also trying to fight, as we fight for dismantle anti-Semitism. Because it doesn't belong among us. Not like homophobia, not like Islamophobia, not like sexism, not like any of the isms that are there with the policy.
Thank you, my sister. You brought up the word anti-Semitism. And one thing I believe that Kyrie was doing is looking at the title of that particular documentary, which was, I believe, Hebrew to Negro. We have to understand this word anti-Semitism keeps going out there. How many of us know what Semitism, a Semite is, first of all? A Semite is a Black person. We can't be anti-Black. We have to make sure that we look at the word and do our due diligence, do our research to make sure that we find out these words that are being used, what they really mean. Do we know that the king was labeled an anti-Semite? Do we know that? It appears that any Black person who tries to fight for their people, who tries to stand up for what's right, gets labeled as an anti-Semite. Right? Thank you.
One more before we get to this question.
Christ made a statement that said, where your heart is, where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. So, with the reason why I brought up Muhammad Ali, Kyrie Irving, Muhammad Ali risked it all. Couldn't box, do anything because he believed what he was standing for. That's what Kyrie, in spite of Joe Frazier was still fighting. Every other black, it didn't bother him. The fortitude, this was his belief. He's standing on it. This conversation is religion and sports. If you love the Most High, love Christ, the book he shared was Hebrews and Negroes, which is addressing the very identity of black people in disproportionate place in America through the transatlantic slave trade. So now this documentary of the Bible gives us identity. Like you said, anti-Semitic comes up. The anti-Semitic, like, that means you come from Shem. So Jewish man is the only one that comes from Shem. You have Arabs or Israelites, you have us, you have Chinese, you have a bunch of people that come from that line. So why do they get to own that term? So that term is not utilized to own everything. It's utilized as a catalyst to stop you taking your identity. You know, we can't let that go over our heads. What Kyrie represented, like if somebody like me, you might look at me as like, oh, they just look at us, so y'all yelling, y'all doing this and doing that. For an entertainer with the status of Kyrie or Kanye to share that, remember, he didn't say anything. He didn't put a comment, put a post. He just shared that. That brings attention to the light that what we've been saying since the '60s is correct.
All right. And with that, we saw a lot of athletes, a lot of players that did so they take a side. But then a couple of days later, we see the Nets put these stipulations to come back to play, and you saw more players speaking out against that. So the question is the punishment and the stipulations that the Nets return to play. What did you all make of that?
I know that we talk about the steps, right? They put those stipulations in for him, and then again, if your job is more important, he should not have done it. Like we have all lost jobs. Boxers that some man has no place in his head. He was a man that was performing miracles, making the blind see, and he did not use it as an opportunity to make himself wealthy at the expense of his people. And so now you have those of us that sacrifice whether it's our wealth, whether it's our job, our home, for the sake of the people. So if that's what he did, he should have been able to stand in his principles. Because once he played, you know what that did? That shut down any black person from taking the stand spiritually. Now you can't, or you have to do it their way. So now, if you have Muhammad Ali as a center here, the only one Bill Russell has done it, Brown has done it. When they wanted to affect change, they stopped going. They did what they had to do. So now with Kyrie in place, even Kanye is better than that. Kanye is losing billions of dollars. Crazy, you know, I'm not saying what he's all insane, all the way right. But what I do know is he lost billions of dollars and has not changed his stance. Kyrie changed his stance so he can dribble a ball. And so we have to look at that.
I have to say, I don't think he changed his stance so he could dribble the ball. He changed his stance so he could make money. And I think we have to not conflate the idea of principles with people being able to make money and get ahead, but why? Because there's a question as to whether anytime you sign a contract to make a certain amount of money, whether if there are things you have to do that were unconscionable, things you have to do that don't have integrity in order to continue to make that money, whether you're actually going to do it. And that's what you're talking about. And for us to be able to watch people in that struggle and not say, here are the principles and values that we want to animate the sports industry. Here's the freedom of agency and voice that we want our celebrities to be able to have, so that if we're going to give them the gift of being called leaders, which is questionable in my mind. I don't think every celebrity is a leader. And I don't stand behind every celebrity's principles and values. I may like how he plays a ball, but do I like what he's doing to his woman? Do I like what he's doing in relationship to people of color? But do I like what he's doing in relationship to class? Do I like what he's doing in relationship to the environment? There are lots of questions about equality and justice that I have before I call somebody my leader, whether that be religious or otherwise. So when we go to the place of commodity and dollars, who is paying for all of these people to be able to play sports? It is not people who look like us. The people who are paying for sports in this country are majority white men. And so they are making the rules. And so that to come into a space where you know that the system, like I said, wasn't built for you, and then to use that as a space in which now you're going to become political activist and protester, you really need to know what you're doing, because you could do just as much damage as you do help if you don't have strategy on board in terms of how. And that's what I would like to say around this. There's a strategy in this moment and an opportunity. People of color, and building up our power and naming our need to be able to be free from a historic system of white supremacy in this country should not be in conflict with being able to say that the history of Jews being persecuted, oppressed, and killed in the name of anti-Semitism, those things should not be two things that are in conflict, regardless of where we feel Jews come from, what they look like, or how they arrived at the space of calling themselves Jews. If for the sake of being in a relationship with the Most High God that allows you to call yourself Israel, that allows you to call yourself Jew, that allows you to call yourself whatever it is that describes that relationship, you become persecuted, it is in all of our interest to make sure that that hatred does not proliferate. Now, if you are a Black man with an opportunity to make that known, that that is a part of what your omnist approach is, that is a part of what you mean when you say humanity, that is a part of what you mean love of God, go ahead. But when you start doing that and it calls folks to start circling the wagons around you and circling the wagons around the beauty of what it means for us to claim our roots, the beautiful education that comes out of having an Afrocentric perspective connected to your religion, we lose opportunities too. And I'm sorry, but we have to hold that both hands. We can't go so far in the direction of saying that our politics and our activism is the sole inspiration for why people are in sports, when they are in sports to make money. And as a result, they will constantly be in this tension of a position of whether they're going to give up money or stand for their principles and values. And it's our job to make the conflict between those two less for these beautiful people who want to stand up. And that's about us as purveyors. That's about us for how we consume. That's about us and how we spend our money, because there would be no sports industry without us paying for it.
You know, one of the things that I've seen is sometimes we think that because you're Black, all Black people should think alike, and all Black people have the same opinion. Just like all white people don't have the same opinion, but they think all Black people have the same opinion about something, and we don't. One of the things that I learned is the fact that just because somebody has a platform, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to make a statement. Because sometimes we have people that because we want them to use their platform, but that's not where they are. They can't sit here like this panel and intelligently let you know this is what I think, because they're just everyday people playing basketball. And so sometimes we put folks on the spot and we make them make a statement by the pressure that we put on, because you're an athlete, you should be doing something. And then when the statement is made, we don't necessarily like the statement that's being made. And so one of the things that folks need to do is really sort of self-regulate sometimes. And people don't really do that. People don't sometimes think before they speak. And then sometimes they speak exactly what's on their mind. It's just that we don't receive it, because that's not the stance where we take. And then sometimes people make a statement and they don't necessarily go all the way. And I'm gonna go all the way, and I'm gonna quit if they don't give me what I want. Sometimes Some people can make a statement, and it's enough to make a statement to sort of kick up the dust. And then if they back off of that, okay, we judge them for that. But the statement has been made, and people are talking, and people are conversing, and it's out there. So sometimes there are some people that open up a door and let others walk through. Then there are some people that walk through the door. And that's really only for them to say which one they are.
So to answer the question about the Nets and their punishment that they gave Kyrie, we have to remember that they're the ones that hold the purse. They're the ones that are in charge. I remember my grandfather saying to me when a man walked into his house with one of his friends, and he said, you know, my grandfather's name was Lewis. He said, Lewis, you know, I took care of the situation. You know, I had plan A, B, C, and D. And then when the gentleman left, my grandfather said, look, Charlie, did you hear what he said? And I knew he was testing me because as a child, you're not supposed to listen to grown folks' conversation. So I said, no, Papa. He said, well, the man said you gotta have plan A, B, C, and D. And then he said, how many letters are in the alphabet? And I said, A, B, C, count on my hands because I was 10 years old. I said, 26, Papa. He said, exactly. 26 plans. So with Kyrie, even though he played basketball, they were holding the purse, the nets, and they came down saying, okay, this is what you want to do. He should have had another plan for that. Just like Muhammad Ali had another plan. You know, he believed in God, he believed in his religion, he believed to follow the instructions of the honorable and honored Elijah Muhammad. Thank you.
Black people are the only race of people I know have to be humanitarians. And that involves their liberation, their coming together to include every other race on the face of the planet. No other race has to do that. When Chinese people come over here, they're about to establish Chinatown, nobody invades it, nobody bothers that, nobody knocks them for it. The Jewish community, like in Brooklyn and Jersey, where I'm from, them Jewish people, if they're walking in the middle of the street, you have to yield to them because they own the town. Nobody says nothing to them. When I hear people say that we got to be self-care, like the gentleman said, I've witnessed self-care for about the past 60 years, self-care. We're just selfish. We just care about ourselves. Nobody is willing to sacrifice. For all this talk that we mentioned about Kyrie, tell me the one thing Kyrie said that was wrong in a response to a question, because all he did was post. He didn't say anything anti-Semitic, and that documentary doesn't have anything anti-Semitic in it. He championed the response. The only failure was the fortitude. That's the only failure. And if we're going to make it about money, this is a millionaire that may have to sacrifice a contract, but he's a free agent this year anyway. So after this year is over, he's going to work on getting another contract, and he'll be able to play ball again, just like Muhammad Ali was able to box again. We ain't talking about a cat that couldn't shoot the ball, that was coming, maybe talk man on the bench. He's a superstar, won a championship. At some point, there has to be a sacrifice of our people. When I hear people say, you got to think about the money, I know brothers that have sacrificed less, have sacrificed their $10 job hour for their people. So if a brother that sacrificed his $10 job for his people, you can't tell me a man that can't do the same thing. But what did Christ say? When that rich man came to him, what did Christ say? Sell all you have and come follow me. That rich man walked away. And Christ said the rich, it'll be easier for a needle to go, what is the eye of a needle go for a horse? I might be messing up. Camel, I appreciate y'all helping me with that one. I appreciate that. Before a rich man can enter into a kingdom, because he's going to value his riches more than his people. And that's what we have to remember. Our people, there's nobody in more of a state of emergency than Black people. And without somebody making a sacrifice, there's nobody that's going to get us out of it. That white supremacy that people are mentioning, and it's not his responsibility to get us out the situation we're in. And we ain't asking him for it. All we ask is that he get out the way. And what we should be doing, the same way he strategized to be against us, we're supposed to be strategizing for us to come together and for the weapons that he uses against us. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right.
2 points of clarity.
All right. We'll have a response and then we'll move over here and then we'll move on to the next one. All right.
Okay, 2 points of clarity. I think it's really super important to underscore the fact that there were things that were in the movie that didn't necessarily tell the story with enough dimension for folks to not believe the tropes. And that's what it is. We signify, right? We imply things, and when we're not clear after we signify and imply things, and we lose people, and those people become hurt and harmed, if those same people have the power to organize and harm us, was it in our best interest to organize in ways that caused the KKK to come and burn our house down? I'm going to tell you, Huey P. Newton and the Black Panthers were a model to me when I learned that some of the ways they organized is they actually went to the KKK and said, this corner of the block is going to be owned by the feds. If we work together, you get this piece, I get that piece. We don't agree on anything. We don't agree on one thing, but we do agree that we both need this corner. So are you willing to work with us? And are we willing to work with you? Now that is a strange thing to imagine. The very first time I heard that, I was just like, what? Does that mean I'm selling my soul in the name of getting forward? No. What it means is that we have to be supreme strategists for our own survival. What we do at home and with each other, what we do when we are building, what we do when we are growing, when we are putting together coalitions and owning the banks and owning the sports teams and creating unions to be able to support our traversing and journey through sports. There are ways in which we are organizing, but it takes strategy. To stand in a moment like this and for Kyrie not to do what Durant did immediately when they came after him for supporting him, which was, let me be clear, this is not about anti-Semitism. I'm not an anti-Semite, and Kyrie should get back in the game. You can figure out how to navigate in ways that allow us to get an outcome on the other side, which is not just our survival, but our thriving. I talk to people all the time about the difference between survive and thrive. I can survive a situation that I know was meant to come and kill me. But to thrive means not only do I survive it, but on the other side, I got something to show for it. I got something that's going to lead me 7 generations forward, something that I can bank on, that I can give to my kids, something that's an investment in who we're going to be in the future as a people. So when it comes to anti-Semitism, I do not think it's in the best interest of us as people of color to be fighting with Jews over an equity that requires, in order for white supremacy to end, anti-Semitism has to end too. And if we don't know enough about that, and if we're not fluent in the ways that anti-Semitism and the folks who are white supremacists and white nationalists have used anti-Semitism as a wedge to divide and conquer between peoples who have been marginalized historically by systems where neither one of those peoples have benefited. If we do not understand that history, and if we can't stand up for that history, we are shooting ourselves in our own foot. So I'm going to name that it was a missed opportunity for Kyrie Irving not to stand up both for Black nationalism, both for the ways in which Black men should have agency and voice to be able to speak their political views, and the need to decry and dismantle anti-Semitism, because the two cannot survive together. Anti-Semitism and white supremacy both have to go. And as a Black Jewish woman, I'm telling you, I have fought for both in the name for equity. And I feel like we do not know enough in the Black community about the damage that anti-Semitism has done to our causes as well.
You know, sometimes we'd like to think they are, but sometimes people just aren't that noble. Sometimes people do things because they think it's the right thing to do, and the consequences come. Now, here's a young man that it's easy to say, well, he's going to be a free agent this year anyway, and he can just kick in, you know, the rest of the year and this and that. But here's a young man who didn't get vaccinated, had issues with teams everywhere he went. People were talking about not paying him. People were talking about not bringing him back. He wanted money and nobody gave him the money. And so there are some practical things that go on also. So he took a stand, and sometimes you just look and you say, okay, I can see how this is going. I can see it's not going, it's not going where I want it to go. I took a stand, yes, but then sometimes back off of those stands. Sometimes people say, well, okay, well, I intended to kick up the dust here, but now the consequences may be too high, too much. And I'm not going to tell somebody that, okay, well, why don't you kick in a few $1 million and then you make it up down the road, because that's some individual's decision. And so I just want to say, sometimes people's motives aren't what we think they should be, but sometimes people do the best they can. And I'm not saying yay or nay. And I know Kyrie because, he was with us. But I'm just saying that sometimes people have other reasons for doing the things that they do. And sometimes they're not the noble reasons that we think that they should be.
All right, that was great. That was a great discussion right there. We are going to move on with the program to great responses by all of you. All right, our next topic is kind of so athletes who use their platform to promote religion or religious propaganda. Now, with that, Kurt Schilling, he made a few years ago, he had made some statements that got him off air. And for a guy like Kurt Schilling, who has he has a big following, a big fan base. When athletes who do stuff like that, the effect it has on fans, it's a big effect. I mean, what do you make of that when someone does something like Kurt Schilling does, and then you see the fans and how they react to it, or they follow suit? What are the dangers in that?
I would say that in the Bible it talks about that the people perish because of the lack of knowledge. He was talking about extreme Muslims. So there's no such thing as an extreme Muslim or extremist Muslim. No such thing, whatsoever. A Muslim is someone who submits their will to God. A Muslim could be a Christian, could be a Jew. We have to understand that America, or media, most effective devil in America, MEDIA, has the hold on us, whether it be through Hollywood. They're the ones that put the movies out with the black faces, Sambo and what have you, so that we can start looking at ourselves less than what we are. The journalism, the television, that's why it's so important for an organization like this to be around. But also we have to understand that it's time for us to separate and do what we know what's right when it comes to religion. We've always been a spiritual people, always, no matter what happens to us. So sometimes it's hard for that word separation to go out there and penetrate Black people, because some of us have jobs with the government. We don't want to let that job go. But as a former Boston police officer, one thing I've known and seen is that anytime a Black person, a Black officer gets in trouble, he's usually suspended without pay. But if you're white, you get suspended with pay. Absolutely. So let's keep it real. We're living in a society where we have broken promises. They broke the treaties with the natives. They promised us 40 acres and a mule. We don't have it. So we have to look at Brown versus the Board of Education. It doesn't happen. So it's time for us to separate. And if either you want to go into the burning house. Dr. Martin Luther King, he talked about with Harry Belafonte that I fear that I'm integrating my people into a burning house. I said, let the house burn and let's build our own house. Thank you.
Sometimes people need a platform sometimes for you to see who they really are. And a lot of times now, I know Kurt because I was there, and I did some things with him, with his business before I went up, it's really interesting that as long as everybody's playing along in the role that everybody thinks that everybody should have, it all fits like a puzzle. But there are some times when that doesn't happen. Sometimes that there are other things that go on and people are able to show you who they really are. I was one on January 6th. I was sort of glad that that happened, even though I think it was tragic as a nation. I think it was tragic. But what I got out of that was the fact that we all got to see that America is not the America that we all think it is, that we all grew up with, that we all had that vision when we sing the national anthem, right? Because there was something that happened that people could then participate with to really show you what they really thought. Now, I'm quite sure if you see a lot of those people during their everyday life, you have no idea who they are. But they were able to come together because it presented itself. And people got to see how it does. And it was really interesting after that happened, when people went to go home, they went to the airport and tried to get on planes. And because they had pictures of who it was, they weren't able to fly home and they weren't able to do this and that. And they freaked out. A lot of those things have been happening to us for a long time. And we know how to deal with those things. I mean, it is what it is. But they had no idea that there were going to be those consequences once they took off those masks and showed people who they were. And so sometimes you need a radio show. You need to say things for people to see that you're not just a guy out there throwing the baseball and winning the baseball game, that you really are somebody else, that you really are somebody deeper, that you really are somebody that some folks may not want to get to know, the real you. And so, yeah, I mean, the things happen and things present themselves. But I think sometimes we need those things to happen in order for us to really understand. And we need to see that. It was good for me to see that all this upheaval going on and to hear Kurt and all that stuff, because we got to be reminded too. Sometimes we look at the smiling face and we sort of get used to seeing that. But sometimes we have to be reminded about the people that sometimes when people wear masks and they take them off, they're different people than when they have them on.
What if Kurt wasn't saying anything that isn't being said by hundreds of people within the church and within the spaces that he navigates every day? Are we more concerned about what Kurt said that we heard about because the news reported it? Or are we more concerned that it's being said by hundreds of people that co-sign, say yes, and agree? What are we more concerned about? There's a way that we create one-dimensional human beings in the context of celebrity status in this country. It's what we see, it's how it shines, and how it smiles, how it signifies to us success. But we don't go further, deeper beneath the surface to find where is the human, where are their principles, where are their values, and do I co-sign those? So Kurt didn't lose much, did he? He got censored and he got to go home. He was like, okay, bye y'all. Sorry, that didn't work out. My question is, when he goes home to all of those people who believe the same thing he does, and those people have access, privilege, and power in this country to make decisions that impact Muslims, that impact our ability to be able to live free in this country without Islamophobia, are we just as concerned then, or as we are concerned with Kurt and what was reported in the news? We have to start thinking about what accountability has to be. Now, look, if we can all leave and go back to the land and the continent and set up independence and have our own economy and our own United Africa and our own, and these are dreams that I've been hearing since my grandparents were in the civil rights movement, right? Of how we gonna be when we finally get to be, yes? I know that dream, and I believe in that dream deeply. And in the meantime, there are people who are struggling in the system to gain and garner the resources to make a life of thrive possible. Are we going to give up on all those people, or create conditions where we can succeed long enough to be able to make decisions with agency of our own? That's what I feel like we're at in the moment we are right now. Kyrie is making millions of dollars. Where are those dollars going?
Kirk making millions of dollars. All these people that are in sports, right? Tim Tebow, the folks you talk about, Neymar, they're being censored for signaling superficial comments. What I'd like them to be censored is, what are you doing with all of that money that's really our money? It's money that we gave you by supporting you and saying we wanted to follow you and your talent and your skill and your wisdom. You're not just accountable to your paycheck, you're accountable to us. So that deeper accountability. And then if we're going to let principles around religious values come through, then let it really be about the principles of what a religion stands for. If he's talking about Christianity, he has that to say about Muslims, who's calling the church into account around its Islamophobia? Who's calling the church into account around its history of racism, anti-Semitism, and white supremacy? Who's doing all of that? I'm less interested in an article just showing a one-sided dimension of a human being that has been commoditized celebrity status than I am in everyday people holding the folks that we raise money for, give money to, and allow to benefit from our support, holding those people accountable to truly represent all of us. And if we're not going to be willing to do that, then continue reading articles because you don't care anyway.
To answer the question, I believe it was about religion at the workplace. That's essentially what you're asking. And I think any job that you have says you have to separate your religious beliefs, because when you have a work environment, you have a bunch of different people coming together at one time. So if an Israelite starts talking about his belief and then a Muslim gets offended, it disrupts the workforce. I believe Kurt Schilling said this at the workforce. So in retrospect, they're treating Kyrie Irving as if he was Kurt Schilling when Kyrie wasn't at the workforce. Kurt Schilling was at the workplace. So there is a certain level of responsibility that you have to have when you make a statement about comparing Nazi extremist Muslims to Nazism. I believe that's what he directly said. And he said it intentionally. He said it intentionally because I'm going to assume he's a Christian. He has an issue with Muslims. So now he makes this statement so that the earth can have an issue with Muslims. That's him making a clear, concise statement to bring out that extreme, which is really weird when America makes somebody an extremist, because there's nobody more extremist than America. I mean, we got to talk about that. I mean, when you talk about the Native Indians, they don't have the land, they're on reservations. When you talk about black people displaced, you ask a black person who they are, you're going to get 10 answers. Most of their identity is going to be their religion. It's going to be Christian, Methodist, Baptist. That's all at the expense of these extremist Americans. So I think they're the last people that are in a position to say anybody that's extreme. But I do think that they treat Kyrie Irving like that. They treat Kyrie Irving as if he said anything. Again, nobody can show me any response Kyrie made other than apologizing for a tweet. Other than not apologizing for a tweet, he didn't say anything wrong. I would like for somebody to just point that out, because he didn't. He also, I wouldn't say he uses his money for every single black person, but there are things that we have seen him do collectively. Even when the brother mentioned up about the vaccine, that didn't call the earth to get into an uproar. Nobody went into an uproar because they didn't want to take medicine, because it's just medicine. If you want to get vaccinated, you get vaccinated. If you don't, you don't. If he was a bum player, nobody would have cared. They probably would have just waived him. But it's because he's a good player as to why it became a big issue. So on that particular question, I don't think that religion should necessarily be involved in the workplace because of the disruption that it could cause. Keep it simple.
And bouncing off that, when we go into the NFL and we saw Tim Tebow, who had his run, and Tim Tebow, whenever he was kneeling and praying, the camera was right there. At any point when he was kneeling and praying, the camera was right there for a while. We see Colin Kaepernick, they made it a point to put the camera away from him when he was kneeling. They made it a point to put the camera away from any player who was kneeling in protest of the national anthem of police brutality. They hijacked that whole protest. Can you guys just, you guys and gals, just talk about those differences with Tim Tebow and Colin Kaepernick and some of those players that were, kind of shunned for, essentially doing the same thing, but Tebow was like the poster boy for Christianity, for God-fearing man, and what's good in the world, as I say.
I'll start off, earlier I talked about media, MEDIA, most effective devil in America. So when you have uh, the media that has almost owns about 99.9% of television, of radio, then you're going to have the focus on their people and make us look bad. But that's why it's so important for us to have our own. There's a reason why Boston, Massachusetts does not have a 24-hour Black radio station. However, we do have Black people that have money, and then we have Black people who are intelligent, but the two just can't come together. Try to figure that one out. For 50 years, we had a daytime station called WILD, Wild. And yes, it could have been wild. However, it needs to be tamed. I would say I worked there. However, we have to say this radio station came on when the sun came up and went off when the sun went down. Did you know in December the sun rises at 7:30 a.m. and sets at 4:30 p.m.? So why is that? So media is very important. And when you have those that control the media, then they will dictate what we see and how we act. And that's why we have to have our own. And I'll just go back to the word separation. It's time to stand up. Thank you.
There's a social contract in America that I believe supports white men being able to say whatever they want when they want to say it and being applauded for it. How do we know? Because right now we have George Soros in the government. The man has lied and stole and done everything that you can do as a child of God in this world that's wrong. And yet they affirmed this man to be a leader in Congress anyway, even after all of this came out in the media. Now, what I want to know is, why does our social contract in this country allow for somebody to be a liar and a stealer and a thief and somebody who has completely fabricated his entire background as a leader, and yet he can still stand up in Congress and be voted into Congress? Yes? But when somebody speaks the truth that they feel aligns with their principles and values, and the amount of melanin in their skin equates to them being brown or black, all of a sudden now they are a revolutionary and a person who is a danger to the public. That is the way white supremacy works. There is no way to say that you're going to work anywhere in this country where white supremacy and religion are not going to be intertwined, because the basis of our country was founded upon white supremacy and religion. It was the Pope in Europe who decided that the idea of colonization and going out to other countries and calling them savage and taking people's lands. Who do you think that was? That wasn't somebody who woke up on a bad day with no coffee. That was the church. So the church condoned white supremacy and the formation of this country from the very beginning. Charters, the ability to own land connected to the church and religion. The ability to have a Christmas tree and a nativity scene in the front of government offices. That is a sign of Christian hegemony in this country. So there's no workplace you're going to go to where you're not going to find that there are certain areas of religion that are going to be applauded and that actually are going to be in line with what white men can say and do, and other ways of being that you're going to lift up and say, hey, how about this? And you're going to find not today. That's not professional. You can't do that here. So once we know that that is a fabric of the system, then yes, we have to find different ways of making different agreements and different social contracts. In relationships to sports, there needs to be a social contract that holds equity for all, not just white Christian men. And white Christian men, and being able to sing the anthem at the beginning of a game and being able to practice a game calendar that honors Christian holidays, but not others. Being able to honor Christmas in the context of the way in which you celebrate a sport. All of this is already a part of the fabric of our society. And it's happening every day. And we are co-signing it by not noticing and not being in relationship with people who aren't benefiting from Christian hegemony. And I'm going to explain what Christian hegemony is. Christian hegemony means that when something is Christian and it happens in our society, that's normal. And if anything else happens, all of a sudden it's exotic, different, or something to pay attention to and lift up as aberrant. This is happening all the time in all places across our system, including the sports system. So Colin Kaepernick isn't necessarily calling it religion. It's his principles and values that he's standing up for when he kneels. Yes? He's not going to be celebrated for that in a system that doesn't honor principles and values of a Black man as normative. A white man standing up for Christianity and saying, I love Jesus every 5 minutes, and claiming every game is a credit and a testimony to Jesus. We so used to hearing that, we don't even blink. But if I got up and I said every game is a quote and a credit to Allah, if I got up and said every game is a quote and a credit to Hashem and the Most High, if I got up and I said every game is a testament to, I'm a Wiccan, let's say, I love to celebrate through my religion the nativity of trees, people would be calling up to find out whether they needed an exam. Why? Because there is no equality in terms of religion, in terms of how we present around power, access, and privilege. When you say power, access, and privilege in this country, people expect that to be white. And if you are anything other than that, saying that I deserve to move through with agency, power, privilege, and access, and to all my humanity and all the ways in which I show up in the world, somebody is going to try to stop you because the system wasn't built for it. And that includes in relationship to religion.
Romans, the 13th chapter says it's high time for us to wake up out of sleep, right? It's not talking about you being in the bed, it's talking about you being spiritually asleep. The Tim Tebow situation in comparison to Colin Kaepernick lets you know that there ain't a greater white supremacy than Christianity. What the sister was saying about Christianity spawned colonialism, it spawned slavery. You just ask the Spaniards when they came over here, and in the name of the Blessed Trinity, they enslaved the Native Indians, they enslaved the Italian Indians, the Mexicans, and they told them you either convert to Christianity or you be a slave. When they came over here, they gave us this, air quotes, white Jesus. When you go into the Bible, he looks nothing like that image. And then we believe in it. Even if you go back to the Ku Klux Klan is burning what on your lawn? They're burning a cross. What does that mentally do to you? It mentally makes you a slave. So Tim Tebow gets on the knees and he's praying, and like the sister said, nobody pays attention to it. What is Colin Kaepernick kneeling for? Well, first of all, he didn't kneel first. He sat in the back. And I think it was a military vet that was offended at him, a white military vet that was offended at him, that he had a conversation and said, well, could you just kneel? And that's how it actually started. So even in then, like the sister said, you got to sit with, remember earlier she was like, you got to sit with a Jewish guy and you got to come up with some type of compromise or something like that. So Colin Kaepernick, right? So Colin Kaepernick, right? So Colin Kaepernick, right? I'm just ad-libbing, sis. So Colin Kaepernick gets with the military vet, and instead of sitting in the back where he was sitting at, he compromised. He says, okay, I'll kneel so that you don't think I'm disrespecting the flag. I'm not trying to disrespect your flag. I just want to bring attention to the murders of Black people by police, which just a couple of weeks ago, you got 4 Black men beating a brother to death. 5. And we wouldn't even know about it if it wasn't for, it probably was a Ring camera recording it. We wouldn't even know about it. Just another Black man dead. And what that echoes is that America only cares about their pain. They're never going to care about your pain. And we should have supported Colin Kaepernick, just like we should have supported Kyrie Irving, just like you should support all these Israelite brothers that you see on every corner USA that's standing for you. That's the only solution. The brother has mentioned a couple of times, separate. A lot of people, when they hear the word separate, they think that means you can totally eradicate yourself. How are you just going to separate? Separate is who you give your fealty or your loyalty to. When you go to your job and you make your economics and you get your finances, that should be pushed towards your community the same way other people push their finances and economics into their community. The white guy at your job don't like you no more than you don't like him, but y'all only working together for them 8 hours and then they going home. So for them 8 hours, I ain't got to cuss you out. You ain't got to cuss me out. You can say all those foul words at your home, and then we give our loyalty to me. Then he gives his loyalty to his people. We don't give our loyalty to each other. I never expect America to have compassion on us. And it's not because I shouldn't expect it. It should be required. If America is founded on Christianity, Tim Tebow can kneel and pray. And if we talk about the foundations of Christianity, then what Colin Kaepernick did should have been a champion, because we're seeing it. Eric Garner got choked out on camera. Nothing. Trayvon Martin, the cops told George Zimmerman not to pursue him. He didn't even listen. Tamir Rice gets killed. So we're seeing injustices happen. And when we ask for justice, we don't get nothing. But them Asians, when them Asians came and they saw the Asian on Asian crime, anti-Asian crime, them Asians came together. What did Joe Biden do? He passed that bill. Has there been an anti-Black bill passed? No. Because we rather join than separate, like the brother said. And you know what? When the Asians got that bill passed, they still fund America. They still will work with them, still go everywhere. But touch an American, touch an Asian again. Watch some Asians come together and affect change. Our change is in our unity, not our separation. And that's what Colin Kaepernick, who another player, sacrificed his money and his position to bring light to an issue that affects us every day. So it'll never be even, to answer the question.
Sometimes people go along with you because it's in their best interest. Sometimes people say things to you because it furthers their cause, not because necessarily they believe it. And I know white Christians from down south, know them from all over the country. You meet people, and sometimes you think that everyone is on the same page. But then the more you get to know people, the more you realize that's not the case. I had a situation where, somebody that I knew very well, and we were talking, and we saw a picture of Jesus once. And it was a white, the Jesus with the long hair, and then there was a picture of a Black Jesus. And he couldn't really get with that. He couldn't do that. I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, you remember when Herod was after Jesus and he was going to kill him and they had to flee? He was 2 years old and they fled to Egypt. I said, the Egyptians are dark-skinned people. I said, so if he was going to hide someplace, right, and he was white, he wouldn't go to Egypt because he would stand out like a sore thumb. And this person that I had known, that we had shared scripture with, and we had done some things, our friendship almost broke up over that because he just couldn't see it. Because as long as he thought that I was thinking exactly like him, everything was okay. But I proved my point. I said, yeah, so he's hiding out in Egypt, and they're looking for him. So if he's white and all the Egyptians are Black, they're going to find him quick in a hurry. And he had never conceived that I had a different idea than he did. And I find that in sports. I find that as long as the owners and as long as the people that own the teams and that do all that, as long as they think we're all on the same page and I'm thinking like you and we're all in step, everything's okay. But as soon as you do what I call a misstep or you're out of step, now we have a problem. Now there's going to be a meeting upstairs or something. So that shouldn't surprise us because that has been the history, as we've said, that has been the history of how it's always worked. Whenever people start, as they say, the natives get restless, right? Then you do tweak it a little bit. You do a little something, and then everybody calms down. And we are a people with a very short memory. So when something happens, as long as one or two things change, and we say, oh, okay, we're good. When it really needs to be 20 or 30 things that change. So it's really interesting that sometimes we expect folks to be more honorable than they are. We expect them to sort of go along, to do what they say, and people don't always do what they say. They do what they get away with. And we expect people to sort of make the playing field even for everybody. And, you know, one thing I learned a long time ago is people don't willingly give up power. You have to take power from people. You have to take what you want from people. And that is really true in sports. It's really true in where we think people have a lot of power because they have a lot of money. Okay, they get paid $20 million a year. Well, the people that with the power are the billionaires that own the team. And so they have some power, that $20 million, but we have to realize it's not an equal playing field. And we have to take some things sometimes if we really want them. And that's what we were talking about before, about how you have to be committed. How committed are you? Are you committed to go a third of the way? Are you committed to go halfway? Are you committed to go 3/4 of the way? And we can't really be mad at people because that has to be their commitment. It has to be what they decide, not what we decide. So.
Before your response.
Yeah, just real quick. The one thing I would add to what you just said is this. You know, I'm with Ibram Kendi and this idea of being anti-racist right now. I know that we have to really push against systems that were not built for us. And I know that within these systems, there are entrenched practices that are meant to do harm to not just Black folk, but a lot of marginalized communities. I know that to be true. There's also this idea of someday. You know how we used to sing, someday we'll all be together, one day, right? We're all singing one day. What's the difference in terms of how we behave between looking at a future that's someday and making demands that this day is the day where this is going to be different? It's having enough power in the system to say, you don't own me. Not own me, own me. We sign away our agency and we sign away our ability to own our own humanity in all of these systems. And I love, you know, my daughter plays sports, you know, she's MVP basketball. You know, we support our young Black woman getting into sports, right? But I'm looking at a trajectory of a future where I want this young woman to be able to be in her full agency, regardless of what choices she makes. And the sexism, right, that dominates the basketball industry means that as a woman, a Black woman in that space, she will make only half the salary of what a Black man basketball player is making in the same industry. Is she in agency to be able to tell that story as she goes into the system and demand, I'm so good at what I do, you will pay me what I am worth, and I will decide what happens with it? Or is she going to go into the system and do what's been done for the past 20, 40, 50 years? This is where I'm saying we have to make choices about looking at a system and making demands within the system that it value us for what we actually bring to that system. Sports is a system that is dominated by people of color who are being used as commodities. If we were all, you talk about unification, you talk about unity. What if all the people that were in the sports industry gave a certain percentage of their salary back to our communities? I don't mean some of them, I don't mean one of them, I don't mean two of them. What if they all did that? How much money would we now have to be able to use to make choices, to be able to deepen our agency, to be able to deepen education, to be able to fight gang violence, to be able to invest in healthcare, to be able to look at all the maladies right now that are hurting our bodies as a result of white supremacy thinking it owns Black bodies in this country? There are choices to be made about how we want to behave in systems and how we don't want to just talk about it and scream about it and say how bad it is, but to name when a system is not operating with equity because we deserve better. And to do that right now. So when I talk about sports and I talk about the press, I wonder whether the press could be a tool to be able to shine light on the spaces where there's a Nike, like I said, that is claiming that they have no tolerance for bigotry and hatred, but just 2 years ago, they were being protested by over 765 people saying that within the Nike system, they actually are being tormented by racism. Who's telling that story? Where's the press shining light on that so that we as a people can get more equity, that we as a people can work more in unity, so that we as a people can have more of the pie to be able to then decide an agency what we want to do with it? There's so much more than just naming or quoting when somebody, like this story you sent us about Neymar, that man was paid £500,000 to not say Jesus. Brazilian Latinx man. £500,000 to not name his principles and commitments to his religion. He took it. Now, I'm not blaming him or his character or his integrity. I'm telling you the system is set up to be able to dole out resources to serve its principles and values. We got to organize to be able to create spaces where our principles and values are a demand, not an ask, not a request. And there are people organizing in the sports arena now to be able to do that. There are basketball players that are creating akin to unions between basketball players to be able to make sure that we get what we need. But I think we have to be forward thinking and not just decrying the system, but organizing to be anti-racist in the system. Meaning we will not operate in this system where everybody has a rule that in the end is going to cause me to lose. We will only operate in this system based on equitable rules that allow all of us to thrive. And that has to go into agreements, that has to go into contracts, that has to go into policies, that has to go into discussions with managers. It has to go all the way up and down the system before we're going to see any change.
All right. We got about 10 minutes. We're going to get to Q&A from the crowd, and we also have some questions to say. But our last topic, we talk about Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, formerly known as Chris Jackson. He has a documentary out on Showtime. If you haven't gotten the chance, you should check it out. It's a very good documentary talking about his journey and what he went through and how basically he's been blackballed from the NBA. He was blackballed from the NBA because he stood on principle. The NBA wanted him to do one thing. He told them no. He stood on it, and then he ended up out the league. Are we surprised that more athletes have not taken a stance on principle like he did? Because I don't know if any of you could think of any that's done it in the last 10, 15 years, but I think he's probably the last player, to my knowledge, that's done that. Are we shocked that more players haven't done that, stood on their principle? Because we've seen many and just abide to the rules of their team or the contracts, whatever. But he's one. He said he stood on the principle. And he was comfortable enough to just walk away from the sport and move on with his life, and it didn't affect him at all. Sometimes when folks get out of the league, they get affected and they don't know how to transition, but he did it. Are any of y'all shocked that we've never seen any other players stand on principle?
I would say that there are more that do stand on principle, but again, we control the media. And once we control the media, then we can get the word out. We can beat the drums. And that's why when we were stolen from Africa, they made sure we didn't play the drums when we got here, because that's how we communicate with one another. So again, I would say that when I say separation, I'm not just talking about this physical separation, but I'm also you have to separate your mind from the way the system operates. And if you're going to make a covenant or an agreement, that agreement should be Most High. Thank you.
That's also why when we first came here, they didn't teach us how to read, because they knew if you can learn how to read, you can educate yourself. If you can become educated, you become more dangerous. And so one of the things that I talk to these athletes is things other than basketball. You know basketball, okay? You're here, so you got it, all right? And so, but you have to learn to expand your horizons around what's going on around you and about how things really work. There are a lot of athletes, you'd be surprised, there are a lot of athletes that are very socially aware. Now, we know about Jaylen Brown because, he went down to Georgia and he marched and he did the things he had to do. There are a lot of other athletes that do that, and they get involved. They get involved on different levels. But one of the things that they have to do is really educate themselves about what's going on, and so that they can be intelligent in conversation and they can make statements that are impactful. And they have to learn to listen to the people that know, because there are people that know and that have knowledge. And that one of the issues that athletes have is they don't always know who to trust, because there are people that want to get close because they're the athletes, because they're the sport. But those people that begin to really spend time working on themselves more than they work on anything else, they begin to grow. And those are the people that make a statement. Those are the people that make a difference. Those are the people that get involved in causes and that do things. And you're right, you don't always hear about it. You don't always hear about what's going on. It's not always printed. If it is, it's some small piece in the paper. But if they get in trouble, if they get stopped on OUI or something, that's on the front page. So you have that aspect. There are a lot of athletes that are very intelligent, and everyone thinks that they're. It's amazing to me how many people say to me, and I've said over the years, "Wow, you guys actually get involved in spiritual things." I said, "Well, yeah, they're a microcosm of society, just like you have people that go to church and go to temple and do all that. It's the same thing on a team." But people don't think of them like that. They just think of them as bouncing a basketball. So, these are real live people that can think, that get involved, and that are very intelligent. And they're doing some of the things, but you never hear about it. And I agree. Every now and then a columnist will write and they'll put something in there. But yes, they need to be more aware so that they can be more involved. I don't think that just being involved is the answer. I think being aware and being involved, because you can be an involved idiot, but you want somebody who comes and has something to contribute. So.
It's an assumption that sports is going to be neutral to principles and values, right? It's just a game, right? Every man for himself. Notice I did not say every woman for herself, right? We're in it to win, right? Think about the culture of the game. The culture of a game is really grounded in principles and values that agree with a capitalist paradigm. Somebody has to lose in order for somebody else to win, right? Somebody always has to be on top, therefore there's somebody else on bottom. We're already dealing with a system that has taught us principles and values in how we play sports. So if we're going to talk about, I was thinking about that conversation between where Shaq was saying he was told that there was no I in team. With Kobe, right? There's no I in team. What is that supposed to be about? So I'm supposed to totally subjugate myself for the sake of being on a team, right? Doesn't that already set you up to subjugate also your principles and your values? Subjugate your own connection to your roots, subjugate your own connection to religion. So it's a context set, right? So the question is, what type of agency would have to be created for folks who are playing sports to retain their humanity, to retain their ability to think, to be seen as more than just big brute bodies, but as human beings, right? Who have principles and values. There has to be a context shift in order for that to be able to be corrected. And in the context of why more people don't do it, we're back into capitalism because it does not make you money. If you just want to play the sport because you love it, you stay out there on the basketball court in the hood. Why you want to leave there and get recruited, right? Because you want to make that big money. So what I'm suggesting is we have to make a connection, because I've always been a person that sees both and. This can be true and this can be true. We don't have to be dichotomous when we're reaching for truth with one another. Truth has many faces, yes? So in the context of folks who are reaching for money, does it have to be that you can't make a whole lot of money and hold your principles and values? We got to make that possibility more of a reality. And when we do that, yes, there will be more players who are able to stand up for what they believe in. But they can't believe, number one, that when they do it, they're going to be alone. Number two, it's going to be a loss that they take as an individual. And then number three, that it's not going to be worth it, because we're going to be talking about it for 5 minutes a day, and then we're going to be forgetting about it the next day, which is the culture of America. So it's up to us, the purveyors, right, of sports, to demand that the principles and values that animate sports actually have to include humanity and values beyond patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy. We have to demand that. And once we do, there'll be change.
Terry, we're gonna get some questions. When you said real quick, when you said Shaq said Kobe that there's no I in team, Shaq was right. There is no I in team, and they were winning. He just wanted to be an individual instead of a team player, which goes right back to what I was saying. We're selfish for our individual needs, but not selfish for our people. If you even think about this conversation that we're having, religion and sports, our leadership is now downtrodden to sports players, entertainers, when it used to be, whether you want to go in the early 1900s, it was the pastor or the minister or some civil rights leader, whether I agree with them or not. We're now down and reduced to, if a entertainer says something, we look at them for leadership. If a sports player does it, we look at them for leadership. That's what white supremacy did. If we look at a brief history of why it's so important for us to be together, remember I mentioned the Asians. Nobody questioned the Asians getting their bill passed. Black people were trying to get a bill passed since we so-called got free in America. But if you look at what we did when we were together, if you go in history in the timeline of segregation, that's why we have HBCUs, historical black colleges, because those colleges was built during segregation. We had our own Negro League built during segregation. You know how that Negro League got destroyed? Dickey, the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers, said, we're going to use their desire to integrate to take their best players. And if they complain about us taking the best players, we'll say, didn't y'all want to integrate? And we sacrificed integration over segregation. Brown versus Board of Education. So now we want to get their education instead of our education. Our education would include our history. The math is the same. So you're only talking about history, maybe social science, X, Y, Z like that. But if we're building HBCUs during segregation, how far behind were we intelligently that we had to forego our education for theirs? If you take the black household, if you go to 1964, per capita, the black household was becoming the #1 household in America. That's what it was becoming. And so then they started putting principles in place, whether it be drugs that we failed as black men, whether it's the feminist movement where our black women failed at listening to that, to where now the black household is eradicated. So if we want history to be the lesson, when the brothers talk about separation, the whole time that they were segregated, just think about it. During segregation, you had the Great Depression in the early 1900s. It wasn't depression for us. We were building. We was building all of them, not just Tulsa. You got Rosewood, you got Paradise, and you got Paradise in Detroit. You got all these different cities. Seneca Village in New York City. You know why there's no Seneca Village? They wanted to expand Central Park, so they displaced the whole village of people just to expand a park. So our principles rely on our spirituality, not our money. Black people are not poor. That's a lie. I know black people are not poor because drug dealers make millions of dollars a year off of drug dealing that we glorify. When I was coming up, we saw a guy driving down the street in a car. I wanted that car, even though my daddy wasn't in the house, because of what that guy sold to get that car. And we lost our principal values. From a religious perspective, Christ said, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. If we don't serve the God of that Bible, follow those law, statute, commandments of that Bible, we are missing the core principles that will tell us what to do with our money. That's what we need. We need somebody to tell us to do with our money, tell us what to do with our loyalty, tell us what to do with our fealty, and then we won't have to worry about the sports guy standing on principles. We don't have to worry about the rapper standing on principles, because the leadership will come from within. It won't come from what some entertainer is doing for sport. But we don't have that leadership because we forgot what history taught us.
All right. If you have a question, we're gonna get to your questions. Pass the mic.
One
Quick
quick
statement, and then we'll get to your questions. If you have questions, have them ready. Pass the mic. All right.
question. I just want to say that story that you told about Shaq and Kobe. That was the teammates were complaining about Kobe because he was taking all the shots, and so they asked Shaq to speak to him. So when Shaq was there, and Shaq said, Kobe, there's no I in team. Kobe's response was, yeah, but there's a M-E in that joker. And that goes to the bottom line of what's wrong, not only in sports, but everywhere. We are so willing for it to be about me, my, I. When the scriptures talk about that that we're to be there for other people, we're to help lift the burdens off other people. So I just wanted to share that's a perfect example of what the problem is. It's all about me. We want black millionaires, but it's all about me. We have people in power, but it's all about me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Folks, we're going to let's give our panelists a round of applause. We're going to take about 20 minutes and do some Q&A.
Thank you so much. I want to first acknowledge BABJ and thank you, BABJ, for having this conversation. Speaks to courage that you have to have to offer a counterbalance. Somebody talked about earlier about the narratives surrounding this entire phenomenon and how we've been given one. So I definitely acknowledge BABJ for having the courage to offer an alternate perspective. A hallmark of a robust conversation is the fact that when I'm here and I show up physically, and I want to have a back and forth with all the panelists, I think that's a hallmark of a pretty good conversation. But I'm going to whittle it down. I want to be respectful of everybody's time and attention span to focus on Captain Brother Tazariak and ask a couple questions. I'll ask one question also to Brother Charles. When Kyrie was in the thick of his controversy with the individuals that call themselves Jews, there was another group of Black Israelites that surrounded the Barclays Center. Many people I know confused it with UPK. Can you draw some distinction between the two groups or maybe some commonalities? Why I thought that was so important was the visceral Black manhood that came at the beck of Kyrie. We don't know if he knew them precisely or knew them personally, but we were very proud to see those brothers respond. And I operate a educational detox for young Black males. Two of my students are here with me now. I wanted them to be part of this so that they can flesh out their desire for intellectual debate. But back to the question, Tazariak, can you draw a distinction between those two? And Brother Charles, can you explain why Islam seems to be a catalyst of so much resistance, particularly in our Black males, when it comes to talk about Muhammad Ali, and we can go on down the line of Muslims who have risen to public prominence, particularly in resistance to racism, white supremacy. Racism, white supremacy is one. There is no racism and white supremacy. One thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. From an organizational standpoint, they're a different organization than us, and they have slightly different beliefs than us that we don't agree with. So that's why they're not with us.
Maybe the trip mine's on.
Testing. Okay, maybe that's what it is. He did that on purpose. I'm joking, brother. But yeah, they came out of our organization and then did different things than us. I think that's what sparked kind of the conversation with the National Association of Black Journalists, was seeing them, because you had people seeing these men speaking, but they wasn't being violent, they wasn't being overly aggressive. They were just speaking on the frustration of a player being suspended over a tweet. And I think that's what we have to see. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. We just don't have leadership. So when you see strong black men and they're standing strong and tall, it's like it amazes the people, it wows the people. But we have to be careful that it's just not for a moment. Because once that event is over, once Kyrie goes back playing, where are those people? Are they marching? Are they talking to the people? Or are they abandoning those people? So we have to be careful that we continue to stay in those communities, which we do. So we're still in those communities in Brooklyn and Harlem and the Bronx and XYZ like that. Hope I answered your question.
1, 2. All right. Nation of Islam. It's prophesied that there will be a new Islam. And that new Islam will rise in the West. Well, we're in the Western Hemisphere, and we're in North America. When you have a black people who have been told about the spookism of this God, but then you have the Nation of Islam who makes God real, a human being, the supreme being. And Muhammad Ali was not thinking of the spookism, but Muhammad Ali was taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that God is real and God is in us. And when I see you, when I see the sister, I see God first. So when you have someone that stands up and believes that and fears God and not the white man, then you have a different way of life, of looking at things. I wanted to also say, when you asked that question about other athletes standing up, well, there is the #1 black publication in America, which is the Final Call newspaper. And if you read the Final Call newspaper, you'll see athletes who are standing up that are not being promoted in white publications. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, sir.
We're going to take some questions online. Any other questions from the audience? We have a couple of online questions. Oh,
How you doing? The brother right here. I'm sorry, I forget your name. Charles. I'm sorry, sir. Now you say you come from a background centered in Islam. So if Islam was a religion that was brought to us by Arabs, how would me being a black man adopt that religion and save myself and my people with a religion that doesn't come from me?
Thank you for the question. Islam was not brought by the Arabs. Islam is a way of life. Islam is in our very nature of doing what's right. See, we come from the earth, and the earth is in harmony with Allah, God. God in Arabic is Allah. So before the Arabs even came, you had Islam. Islam is a way of life, a righteous way of life. Man has taken it and called it a religion. So if you want to do what's right, that's Islam. If you want to think what's right, that's Islam. If you want to be the example in your community, that's Islam. Unfortunately, white media has taken us and made us think that Islam is some boogeyman, some bad thing. So just do what's right, and you're living Islam. Thank you.
oh, you got a question?
I may. This one directly is actually for all the panelists, and I think it's kind of based off something that I heard you, Brother Charles, say earlier. I think you were in agreement with Captain Zaryak to the fact that there's a monopoly being used by one ethnic group of people for anti-Semitism. It's clear that there are larger ethnic groups who all fall under that category. So then, seeing as if that being true, then this is something I didn't think I heard answered today. Was there anything anti-Semitic actually then that Kyrie Irving did or posted?
The answer to that is emphatically no.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that, no. I say no as well.
There was something he did wrong. What he did wrong is he didn't name the way in which the tropes that were a part of the film actually signified real harm to real people that has been experienced by human over generations. Now, there's a lot to be parsed by us as people of color in order for us to really understand the history of religion and people of color. Even the idea of being people of color or even calling ourselves Black is a function of us having been raised in the shadow of white supremacy as humans. There was a time in the dawn of humanity we did not identify around color at all. We identified around being the son of, being the daughter of, being a part of the tribe of. This is the way we lived as humans. And white supremacy taught us to value ourselves and our bodies in the context of something as random as melanin, which has nothing to do with our DNA. So there are ways in that video in which it was a denial of real harm that has come to people, millions of people, at the hands of people like Hitler, who enacted a Nazi genocide upon very real people, very real numbers of folks who, for no reason other than they're being called and named and categorized as Jews. We have no business, however we identify around the melanin in our skin, to deny that as a real experience. We have no business looking at the number of people who were displaced, who were expelled from almost every different community in Europe. Every single different community, almost every single different nation in Europe expelled its Jewish people because of what the Christian religion taught about evil and about Jewish people being the killers of Christ and about a bunch of other things that are not true, but allowed folks to turn to the side when pogroms would happen, which is nothing but the same thing we experienced in the United States when people would come through a Black community and kill and rape and pillage as a result of the color of people's skin. We have to stop separating ourselves from the cause and the cry out that people come through this world and decide that because of arbitrary nature, because of arbitrary aspects of their humanity, they have been given a path on enacting violence and enacting terror and humanizing other people. To me, that goes to the basis of my humanity as a Black woman. There were things that were said in that film that actually didn't directly, but leaned in the direction of tropes that white supremacists and white nationalists use right now to continue to condone the killing, the genocide, the extermination of people that they call Jews. And anytime at the University of Virginia, people can actually hold torches, white supremacists can hold torches and march across a campus of young people that I actually had to go through to support, okay? A campus of young people screaming out, Jews will not replace us, blood and soil, which are the tropes of the Nazi regime. Anytime that can happen right now, and terrify students to the point where they can no longer feel safe on the campus, it is in my best interest as a Black woman who knows what that has looked like in the DNA and blood of my family, for these same kind of people to come through neighborhoods, to come through communities, to burn crosses on lawns, to terrify and vilify people, and to hang them up on trees. I am sorry. I will never say anything that allows those people to feel like they get a pass in my hood. If we hold that lens on that film, there are some things we said that may give those same pass. And I'm sorry, we have to cry it out when that happens. We have to say, get it straight. We have to tell the true history. And that doesn't mean the whole of what that film put forth was wrong, but there were definitely discrepancies. And in those discrepancies, if the people who have been harmed by the type of violence that I'm describing say, hey, wait a minute, that looks like the type of harm that ran through my family and caused me and people that I love and my ancestors to disappear and
die. As a person who has ancestors that have disappeared and died, I'm sorry, my compassion comes out first. So what opportunity did Kyrie miss? He missed an opportunity to be able to name that as a Black man, he has compassion and he has understanding and he has wisdom of the ways in which white supremacy has killed and has terrorized Jews just as much as it has killed and terrorized his ancestors and the people that he comes from. Because he doesn't identify as a Jew. If he did, then this would be a different conversation.
All righty, thank you. We'll do maybe one question online.
We did have some people submit some questions online. There's some good ones on here, but select two. All right. The first one, why are Jews so effectively able to organize against anything or anyone that criticizes a Jewish person and label all such criticism as anti-Semitism?
I'll start off by saying that America sends over $36 billion to them every year, number one. Plus, they control Hollywood, they control media, they control the NBA, the NFL, if you look at the owners. So they control a lot. And the reason why they control a lot is because of their unity. What we need to do is look at how they operate so that we can unify amongst ourselves as Black people. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but we're doing it again. This is what I'm talking about. You can't say they unanimous and say unanimously Jews control anything, because Jews also look like me. Jews haven't been historically brown. Jews right now come from places like Jerba and Tunisia and Ethiopia and Africa and all sorts of places where our melanin is bright and beautiful. And you cannot say them and not include us. There's education that has to happen among us as people of color to be able to really stand up against anti-Semitism, because the protocols of the Elder of Zion were actually used in this country to propagate not just anti-Semitism, but white supremacy. When Jews couldn't get a job at Ford, neither could Black folk. When Jews were not allowed on the island of Manhattan, neither were Black folk. When Jews came to this country in the name of religion, were told that they were people who in their blood were so craving of money that they couldn't trade, and therefore were left out of the ability to be able to trade as real people in this country, real humans who came from oppression, looking for a better life. That also was happening to Black folk. We got to stop saying they unanimously and leaving out the truth, which is that these Jews that we think entirely represent white people is our buying into white supremacy, because the original Jews were not white. They included people who look like me. And I don't need to go through anybody else's translation to be able to talk about castigating the folks who are Jews that I claim as mine as being folks who are diverse, folks who have had historical melanin, folks who have various different entry points and various different political views. We got to stop saying they, because when you talk about we send them money, what you're talking about is Israel. And Israel is also a place that is representative of multiple races and multiple cultures. And historically, that region of the world has never been white either. We've given white supremacy a pass and allowing that to become the truth of today's reality. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask you to take that back.
Thank you, my sister. I appreciate that. And I believe in the context of the question, we weren't talking about Black Jews, with all due respect. Thank you.
I think that white supremacy includes Jewish people. I'm sorry to say it. For all this stuff about Jewish people, if you go through history, Jewish people owned slaves too in North Carolina. So they're not going to get a pass, and they're impersonating people that are the children of the book. When I went over to Israel, for all this love that the Israelis are supposed to have, there's a section of Black people. I met him. So I go to Israel and I meet the brother, and he shows me the section where Black people never left Israel. During the expulsion of 70 AD, you had a portion of Black people that never left Israel. You know where the Israelis have them? In the prison section. That's where they have them. If we go 1964, when Ben Amin and them took those brothers and they said, we the children of Israel, and they go back into Israel, Israelis wouldn't let them in there at all. And the only way they would let them in there is if they converted to Judaism and they sacrificed their kids into the military. And just 3 years ago, they told them they was going to transport them. And you got black people saying on camera, we did what you wanted. We converted to your religion. We gave you our children. What more do we have to give? So when the brother brought out, they run a diamond district, they run Hollywood, they get funded by America. That's just facts. The government of them is no less white supremacist than the American government. And that's why when you say something against Jewish people, they shut you down. Selectively, though, because nobody shuts down Amazon. If we're going to put it in proper context, that Hebrews and Negroes been on that site since 2015. Nobody said nothing about that until Kyrie Irving makes a post. And for all the uproar they doing to Kyrie Irving, a black man, nobody's going to the owner of Amazon and saying, we're going to boycott you. But they made sure Kyrie couldn't play. That's Jewish people that did that. Why didn't they have the same energy for the owner of Amazon that they had for Kyrie, that they had for Brooklyn? They're telling Brooklyn, you're going to lose this, and Brooklyn's so worried about losing their sponsorship. Who also helped Adidas, which has German ties. There's hypocrisy there when we try to absolve Jewish people from saying that if you say something against them, they shut you down. I remember you cut that mic on. I was finished. Now, you of all people shouldn't be cutting that mic on as long as you be talking and we be sitting there quiet. Now, you of all people shouldn't be doing that. Yeah, she shut me down. She was tired of hearing me talk. Now, she done talked the longest on this stage. Ain't gonna cut her mic on. About 20 minutes, be your own people. But she Jewish, so you gotta be careful. No, I'm joking. I had a conversation. Anybody getting their feelings, you know what I mean? We having fun up here, I thought anyway. So when I had a conversation one time, I'm at Motor Vehicles in Jersey City, New Jersey, and I'm having a conversation. This guy asked me, what is all the issues? Why do the issues with America, Israel, and Palestine? I said, the problem with America trying to resolve the issues is they're pro-Israel, and the Jewish man got upset at me. And all I was simply saying is, if you're supposed to be the mediator between the issue between two nations, but you're pro one, you're not going to be able to mediate that. So we have to stop acting like there ain't an agenda, that you can't say anything anti. There's nothing Kyrie said that was anti anything. Anything. Only thing he didn't do was apologize for sharing a documentary that was on there for years before he ever said it, and we're not seeing it. Them attack Amazon, and that owner of Amazon said, I'm not taking the DVD down. I'm not taking the book down. Nobody's saying nothing to him, but he has the complexion for the protection. Kyrie does not. Are you?
All right. Well, we'd love to have more. We had to have one question off that segue, but we've come to an end here. We've come to an end. Give the panelists one more round of applause. We'd like to thank BU for you letting us use your space for this discussion. It was a great discussion. I'd like to thank all of you all for coming here, taking the time on a cold day. Thank you to the Boston Association of Black Journalists for putting this together. This is great. And we hope you all enjoy it. Melanie, you have something to say?
Let's thank our moderator too.
Yes, please thank our moderator, Mukala. Thank you. That was an awesome job. Again, thank you, panelists. We have a small gift for you for your time tonight. Thank you so much for coming out. And girlfriend, we are not going to forget any of this stuff tomorrow. We're going to go home and study tonight, right, everybody? And a shout out to our young people. You said you brought some young people with you today. Shout out to all of the young people, because you didn't have to be here, and hopefully you learned something. There are two last things before we close. We're going to let our president say a quick word, and then we have refreshments outside. So stay around and mingle. We do want to give you a little bit of time to mingle. We know it's getting late. You want to be respectful of your time. So definitely stay around and mingle, have some refreshments. And I'm going to hand out these, and Gary, come on up. This is our chapter president, Gary Washburn.
Thank you guys for Amazon gift cards. If they bought Hebrews and Negroes, and then it might be worth it, right? Anyway, I want to thank you guys for coming out. I'm just so impressed with the panel. Thank you for the great conversation. And even though the reason I wanted to put this together is we have so many different viewpoints and we're not a monolithic people. And I just wanted 4 viewpoints to discuss it. And we discussed it well and robustly. And I really appreciate that. And hopefully people can keep in touch and continue to discuss these issues because they're very important. So thank you for coming out and weathering the weather, the snow, and you know, we'll want to do more and bring more of this in the future. And thank you a lot. Appreciate it.
And we look at who's gonna look at first? All right, right, this sister right here.